Paper? Yeah, and the twos. Ah. I don't have one on both sides, but okay, so let's take a look at 19 and 20. 19 and 20. Oh, wait, I had something to say. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at our multi-step equations. So if we see something like this, like number 19, and I've got these parentheses going on, I usually want to like get rid of the parentheses in order to simplify the equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this little mnemonic device, DCAM. So I'm going to start, huh? Yeah, DCAM, DCAM. No, I said DCA. Well, I said DCAM. I don't, which I guess could be a C or a K, right? Because a C makes a K sound sometimes. Like camera. Huh? It could be. Okay, so when we have like a number out in front of the parentheses like this, what do you usually do? What do we think? Distribute it. That's what the D stands for, distribute. So I'm going to do 2 times x, 2 times 5. What's 2 times x? And what's 2 times 5? Okay, and then the rest of it all stays the same. Right, so I distribute in order to remove the parentheses. And then my next step is going to be combining like terms. Combine like terms. I do, but I need some collateral for a pencil so that I know I'll get it back. So just put your Chromebook over there and you can take a pencil in the basket. Yeah, just put it on the desk, put it on the table, yeah. And then there's that little basket right there. Yes. And then just give it back when you're done, please. Okay, so my next step is combining like terms. So I look at each side of the equation. The right-hand side, there's only one term, so I can't combine it with anything. But on the left-hand side, do I have any like terms? Good, 2x and 3x. And what's 2x and 3x combined together? 5x. So now I have 5x plus 10 equals 20. And now we are just at a regular two-step equation. So what's my next step going to be? Good. And so that's my next step. I'm either going to have to add or subtract, right? If this was 5x minus 10, then I'd have to add 10. But since in my original equation, it's 5x plus 10, I need to subtract, right? Subtract 10 on both sides, right? These guys cancel. And we have 5x is equal to 20 minus 10. It's 10. Okay, and then what's the final step going to be? Dividing, right? So that final step is either going to be multiplying or dividing. In this case, we divide because it's the opposite of this multiplication. So divide by 5, divide by 5. So my 5's over here cancel. And we have x is equal to what? To 2. Okay. Does that make sense? So when we have parentheses Or if we have like terms on the same side of the equal sign, you want to get that stuff simplified. So either distribute to get rid of the parentheses, combine your like terms. And when there are, well, let's look at number 20. What's different about number 20 than all the rest of the equations that we've seen? Good, there's variables on both sides, right? I have an m over here and an m over here. So when there's variables on both sides of the equal sign, there's kind of two ways to go about it. The first thing we can do is I could just move my variables so that they're all on the same side of the equal sign. So I could move one of my variable terms so that they're all on the same side, right? There's also a little shortcut, and I've taught you the shortcut. I haven't taught you really how to move it, but you kind of already know how to do that. But my shortcut has me just compare my variable terms. Compare the variable terms and the, not the like terms, but the constant terms. So it is sort of comparing the two like terms, the variables and the constants. And then we set those two things equal to each other and solve. So let's do that. We'll do the shortcut first, and then I'll show you the long version. So what are my variable terms in this equation? The ones with the variable in it. Good. Negative 3m and 5m. What's the difference between negative 3m and 5m? Good, 8m. 8m. Right? That was like tripping up a bunch of people today. Negative 3 to 5, right? It's adding 8. And what is the what are my constant terms? Negative 5 and negative 13. What's the difference? Also 8. Right? If I think about 8, negative 13 to negative 5, it's also 8 more. So that means the difference between my variable terms is equal to the difference in my constant terms. So 8m equals 8. How do I solve for m? Divide by what? Yeah, on both sides, right? To cancel out this 8 and get my m isolated. So what does m equal? 1, right? 8 over 8. So m equals 1. M equals 1. And I like this little shortcut, but sometimes it gets a little confusing about like if it's negative or positive, am I subtracting, or it gets a little funky sometimes. So what I always do when I use this shortcut is I just plug it back into the equation and just double check and make sure I'm right. So if I plug in 1 for m, I'd end up with negative 3 times 1 minus 5. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. Then if I plug in the 1 here, I have 5 times 1 minus 13. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 minus 13 is also negative 8. So I know that I'm right. So if you want to use a shortcut, I would just suggest checking your answer, plugging it back in and making sure that you got it right. Because it's easy to end up with a negative instead of a positive, or a positive instead of a negative. Okay, so that's kind of the shortcut version. Let me show you the other way. So we'll rewrite the equation. Negative 3m minus 5 equals 5m minus 13. So I said our other option is to move the variable terms so they're on the same side. So I can either take this negative 3m and move it over to the right, or I could take my 5m and move it over to the left. Either way, it doesn't matter. But I choose to move this negative 3m. right? And it's not just as simple as saying, I don't want this negative 3m here, I'm going to put it here, right? It doesn't work that way. If I want to move this negative 3m, I have to remove it from this side. So how am I going to remove negative 3m? What's the opposite of? Good. Add 3m. So if I add 3m to the left-hand side, I've got to add it to the right-hand side as well, right? Now we've got negative 5 over here because this cancels out. Negative 5 is equal to 5m plus 3m, 8m minus 13. Now we just have a two-step equation. What are the two operations we see over here? Right, if I was evaluating, multiplication comes before subtraction in order of operations. So we need to undo the subtraction first. We're working backwards. How do we undo subtraction? Addition. So what am I going to add? 13, right? Because that cancels out that 13. But if I added 13 here, I got to add 13 here. 13 and negative 5, that's 8. So I end up with 8 is equal to 8m. See, we got back to that shortcut. We're right back at the same place. But now I got to undo this multiplication. How do I undo the multiplication? Division. So I divide both sides by 8. And again, I get m is equal to 1. Okay. So this second way, moving the terms around, that's like always going to work. I feel like you can trust it a little bit better. But this is a nice little shortcut if you want to try that out too. All right, any questions on this? Okay, we're going to get a little practice in.